Alright, this is going to be a quick tutorial on how to customize colors and how to customize the typography in Pegasus UltraUI Design System. So we're going to start with the colors. The color palettes drive all of the theming for the components, and every component that you see, all of the colors are derived from the color palettes. So you'll see purple is the brand color by default, so you'll see a lot of purple in some of the accents, and then you'll see other colors as well, and they're all in what we call variables. So they are connected to critical, warning, success, info, brand, and neutral. Obviously neutral is your black and white palette. You can change that if you wish, but these are sort of tuned for accessibility, and so it takes a lot of tweaking to get these in a correct state where things are not going to look washed out in dark mode, etc. So let's look at brand first of all. So again, I talked about variables. So if you click the little toolbar on the right side under the panel in the right in Figma, it's called variables, and there's that little open variables. When you open that, you can resize this window, and here you will see under colors all of the color palettes. So neutral, we see the dark monochrome palette for dark and light, so they invert, and then brand, you'll see these purples, right? So if, say, you wanted to change all of these 50 through 950, so they use the kind of tailwind standard, which has become very popular as far as naming conventions for the entire ramp. So there's another tool that I built called uxlayouts.com. You can go to uxlayouts.com. There's a section for type that you can mess around with spacing, elevation, but color is probably one of the most powerful. And you can either enter a hex value, or you can go to the palette and you'll see a lot of different available colors here. Like I see deep pink, I get a complete palette, and so it ranges from 50 to 950. You can go into the settings and you can change it to not include 950 or if you're just going to 900, but since this supports the full latest Tailwind standard, I would just recommend going with that. You can also pick your own color, so you can get something that's close to your brand aesthetic. And if you'll notice, what it's doing here is it's not just taking the color right out of the color picker, but it's actually testing it for accessibility. So it's making sure that you're going to have colors on the high end that contrast well with black, and on the low end that contrast well with white. And so you can set those to whatever you like, or again, like this, you can go in, and they have monochrome colors too. So if I just went with coral, it's going to be my color. Then I can copy these, and see it says copied, and I could go through and work in replacing these. So I can just paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and all the way down, right? So this is pretty straightforward. Take these all the way through. Let's get that one again. And then for this last one, I'm going to do 50% of the 500. So I can go here, I can enter that in, and it's going to keep, actually 35%. So it's going to keep that there. And then I can basically invert. So I'm going to go from light to dark. So I'm going to go here. Second one, I'm going to go to the 8th one, so on and so forth. I'm just going to copy these up and down. What I'm doing is I'm inverting for dark mode. So in light mode, something that's dark is going to become light, etc., etc., and they meet at 500. That's where they're equal. That's the midpoint, and we'll go all the way through. And there we go. There's our ramp. So we should see slight color gradation all the way through the ramp, and it should be completely inverted. And then here we can enter the same one. All right. So that's basically good to go. We've updated our brand colors. You would do that, and you can play around with this tool, or you can, custom fine tune your own colors, but it'll be a good starting point as well to get you close, and then you can tweak it. So now if we start going through the components, we'll see that the brand colors are now different. Let me see here. Good example here. So we'll see the brand color buttons were purple, now they're orange, so on and so forth. If I go through, let me zoom out a bit. Yeah, the brand color would normally be purple, it's orange, orange, etc. So that's what's going on there. You could do the same to the dark mode and be exactly the same. When you add a darker color like slate, you would just add complete light color and complete dark color. So that would be 1000 would be pure black, and then 0 would be FFF, right? So complete white. And other than that, the colors are the same. But yeah, you see neutral, we've got a 0 here, we've got a 1000 there. But you could use this color picker, and there's a lot of different nice shades: zinc, gray, neutral, steel, pewter, titanium. Titanium's really nice. That's a clean one. Chrome is also really nice. I've used that in the past. So you can update those. And then there's some colors that are more related to just kind of darkening and lightening layers. So the darken inverts, and then you'll see darken media. So if you have, say, a protection layer, a background behind text, and you want that to overlay a video or an image, you don't know if that image is going to be, if it's user generated, very light, very dark, or anything in the middle. So you don't really want these colors to invert. You want to keep, say, a dark dimming layer, where there's, say, a blur on it, beneath a really, say, close to white text, or vice versa. So that's what the difference is between these. By default, it's going to darken, but in dark mode, it's going to lighten. By default, it's in light mode, it's going to lighten, and then dark mode, it's going to darken. And then you could have these lighten media and darken media to kind of lock in. And these are not really considered part of light mode or dark mode. If you had like a video player, say in like a TikTok or Reel or something like that, those would be on media. And so those are sort of separate. And then we have the normal, info, warning, critical, darken. Critical. So you could change all of your default like success or failure colors. That's totally fine. So that's pretty much color. If we go into devices, these are certain, fonts. So we can have different fonts display, different sizes display of fonts. So we'll see responsive typography is going on here. We have this huge that on mobile is only 48, right? If you had numbers, and then caption, it's pretty much locked in. So these smaller numbers, you don't want them to get tremendously smaller. So you'll see the kind of dynamicism happens at the higher end of the typography ramp. And you can change these. You can go in and change these to whatever you want. You can change them to some of the other values that are in like the size ramp, right? There's spacing, breakpoints. You can adjust the breakpoints on desktop, on tablet, non-mobile. So you can set all these Boolean values that'll help you turn things on and off if you're doing responsive design. Spacing dynamic. So this is like if you want to say have a comfortable default and kind of compact theme, you could use that to adjust there. And then radiusing, a little bit of dynamicism at the larger ranges, and then full, which is like a circular. Stroke widths, so half, 1, 2, 4, all the way up to 8. If we go to themes, you can also set themes, which these are only really interesting if you're, say, an agency that's building prototypes for potential clients, because if you're a brand, you're probably going to lock into one default theme, unless you go multi-theme or multi-product. If you're, say, a parent company and you have sub-product brands, then you could use this to, say, if you're like Meta, you could have Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. That would be an example. But you can change the font, the primary and secondary accent colors. And this affects a lot regarding to like landing page blocks. Here you'll see a lot of sort of diversity in some of the themes, and that's because they have themes applied. So here you'll see different colors, and different font styling and such. And that's because we're using the themes here. We're using a different, elegant theme for more of the brutalist, and then we have other themes going on here too. All right, so that's how themes work. We go down to tokens. So this is the primary naming convention. You have CTA primary, think a button, etc. Brand, secondary, tertiary, critical. And then we have inputs, so these are text inputs. Booleans, these are things that are true or false, like checkboxes and radios. Then there's tabs, pretty self-explanatory. Status, so status, you can think of badges. You can think of toast notifications, right? So they have a theme that goes with them. So it's like, maybe the text color, the background, and then the border and the icons. So that's that. And then we have units, so that's those kind of the complete spacing ramp, all the way from 0 up to a large display breakpoint size. So you'll see that it's pretty granular at the lower end where you need more specificity, and then it starts to grow in the gapping kind of as we get to the higher, larger end of the spectrum. Cool. All right, so if we go back to devices, we go to fonts. 3 major fonts: display fonts, which are kind of these bold titles here in this app that I built. Code, which is a code example, like if I go over to CSS, right? So we have a monospaced font. These are also great for financial apps, crypto apps, stock trading, etc., fintech. You'll want the numbers to all line up, so you see that even though the 2 and the 9 are normally different widths, so these would be kind of slightly askew, they're all lined up perfectly because it's using a monospaced font, which you also want when you're reading through a bunch of lines of code, etc. If I go over to type, see where everything lines up really nicely because it's using that monospaced font. And then we'll have the body font. So body font, Enter is pretty hard to beat. It's very readable. Display fonts, there's a lot of great ones, Pop-ins, Outer, Gist Mono is another great mono font. Space Grotesque, that's a good one. Enter is also good for display. Fig Tree is another great one. I tend to prefer ones that are from Google Fonts. So here in UX layouts, you can also try out some of these as well. And you can see what they would look like. Sans. Fig Tree, I think I remember that one. It's pretty clean. Plus Jakarta Sans, another clean one. Geometric. And then Enter's kind of it's hard to go wrong. Nice default. And then Roboto for Android. There's some newer ones that I want to add in here. Outer is really nice. So you can just update these right here. It's pretty straightforward. You just change the name and you make sure that it is in the Google family. So you can go to Google Fonts and you go right here and you can search. There we go. So just make sure they're in the family, and then I try to look for ones that have a broad family of weights, unless it's variable. That's really helpful. You can have flexibility in whatever you're building. If you need to add other weights, it's nice to have a font that has at least 7 different weights. For body fonts, you don't want something that's highly geometric or decorative. You want something that's readable and looks great at small sizes. Something like Open Sans, something like Enter, or San Francisco, something like that. You can adjust the weights. So as I mentioned, just go into Google Fonts and check the weights, make sure that they're available in Figma too. Usually Figma has a pretty good one-to-one with Google Fonts. I know with Lato, they don't support the latest set of weights, so they only have like 3 weights, whereas the one on Google Fonts has 7. So that's something to look out for. Make sure that they're matching up so your developers don't get confused. Sizes, so you can adjust these sizes in the different different breakpoints for different devices. And then you might be wondering, okay, I've got my line heights and my letter spacing, so you can adjust that. Different fonts will be more closely or more loosely letter spaced, so you can adjust these based on the font that you end up going with. And then when you do that, all of these text styles, which are already hooked up to all the components, will update. So if I go in here, you'll see that it's using the display font, and the display font is plus Jakarta Sans on this theme. How would you set those devices? So as you're going through, you might want to set a device to, like, say, mobile, and you'll see a lot of things adjust here. So that's actually how you would adjust that, so on and so forth. And then you can also adjust the themes. So you could say go from brutalist to cyber, and it's going to change just like that. Default is changing the font back to brutalist. Cool. All right, so that's how you update font and color. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, definitely let us know. And I hope you have a great time designing. Take care.